Welcome to the deep dive. We are opening up a stack of material today that I think tackles one of the most pressing questions facing you, the decision maker. And that is, what if the greatest risk in all this uncertainty isn't actually making the wrong move, but making any decision without genuine wisdom?
Mm-hmm.
We live in a world that, well, it fundamentally rewards speed, right? It prioritizes raw information over true insight, and it demands instant reaction instead of, reflective strategy. It's frankly exhausting.
It really is. And our source material today, well, it cuts right into that exact tension. It's a really deep exploration into leading with clarity, what the authors call wisdom in action, especially within this relentless current of complexity we're all navigating daily.
Okay.
Our mission here really is to give you some practical tools for discernment, the kind that lead to choices that don't just hit the short-term targets, but truly endure. Endure both in strategy and in spirit, as they put it.
Right. And here's the paradox we really have to start with, I think. We've equipped ourselves with algorithms, instant data dashboards, more raw knowledge than any generation before us. We have incredible intelligence.
Yeah, unprecedented.
But then when we look at major institutional failures or even just our own day-to-day struggles, the decisions often seem, well, less wise, less grounded. We have the knowledge, but maybe lack the know-how to use it well.
That gap is exactly the core challenge. Our sources make a really compelling argument here. Wisdom is that necessary filter. It's what transcends just the data. It allows us to actually decipher meaning and purpose. Intelligence asks, what can we do?
Right.
But wisdom asks, what should we do? And that's the ethical, the enduring question that, too often just gets sidelined.
Okay, so let's unpack that. It's operational fog, as you called it. This material identifies three persistent modern challenges, things that drain leaders and really undermine good decisions.
Yeah.
The first one is pretty straightforward. Information overload. I mean, you know the drill. Too many options, too many metrics, and just far too little clarity on which signal truly matters in all that noise.
Absolutely. And that information deluge, it feeds directly into the second challenge.
Yeah.
Moral ambiguity, the pressure cooker of modern markets, the instant feedback loops. It means the lines between right and wrong, they get constantly blurred under the pressure to perform or, just please everyone.
And the third one, which I think is probably responsible for so much burnout we see, it's emotional fatigue. It's simply the cost of constant high-stakes decision-making without building in any real space for spiritual or intellectual renewal. We're just running on empty.
And this is where the source material gets really fascinating because it draws on this ancient analogy. They describe this whole environment as the new Babel.
The new Babel, okay.
Yeah, think about that biblical Tower of Babel metaphor for a second. That failure wasn't because they lacked resources or engineering skill, right? They had all the bricks and mortar. That's the data, the talent, the execution power today. But there was no unifying transcendent purpose, no why. They were basically building to glorify themselves, and the result was just catastrophic noise and confusion.
Yeah.
And today, we make that same mistake. We confuse having mountains of data with actually having unifying insight.
And I guess that confusion leads directly to what they call the marketplace of idols. That makes sense. When there's no single transcendent purpose, well, every decision gets pulled by competing demands for our loyalty, our allegiance.
Precisely. I mean, walk into almost any major organization today, and you can see these idols vying for attention. You've got the god of profit battling the god of efficiency, which battles the god of popularity or maybe click counts.
Right.
And this internal conflict, this constant battle, it creates the very moral ambiguity we were just talking about. When scalability, that's efficiency, directly conflicts with long-term quality or maybe integrity, which one wins? That clash inevitably causes ethical drift.
And when we're stuck battling those idols, we inevitably fall victim to the tyranny of the urgent, don't we? We become completely obsessed with what the Greeks called Chronos, that quantitative clock time, the deadlines, the quarterly reports, just ticking away.
Exactly. And when we are constantly just reacting to Chronos, scrambling to meet the next deadline, we completely miss Kairos. That's the opportune time. Kairos is that qualitative moment, the strategic window that really defines great, enduring leadership. Being swept away by the clock makes us miss those specific moments when actually a strategic pause or maybe a difficult conversation is what's truly needed.
Okay, so if just having high intelligence isn't enough, we really need to understand what wisdom truly is. The sources here offer a really profound contrast between mere cleverness, which they call the wisdom of this world, often just leading to short-term self-promotion, and something much more foundational, a building wisdom.
And this brings us right to the concept of chokmah. It's the Hebrew word for wisdom. And Chokmah, crucially, isn't some abstract philosophy. This is the key insight from the material. It's defined as applied skill or skillful living.
Wait a minute. If Hokmah is just applied skill, how is that different from having, great high-level intelligence or just being a superb technician? Are you saying wisdom is just being really good at your job?
Ah, that's a critical question. The difference really lies in the aim and the foundation. Chokmah was often used to describe an artisan. The source specifically cites the craftsman Bezalel, who built the tabernacle. He had the Chokmah to take these chaotic raw materials, gold, wood, thread, and skillfully shape them into something that was functional, beautiful, and importantly, reflective of a specific higher design.
Ah, okay. So a wise person isn't just someone who knows a lot or like someone who can build a spreadsheet really quickly. They are someone who builds well, whether that's a good life, a resilient team, a product that actually serves people. They skillfully shape the chaos of life into an order that lasts.
Exactly. Wisdom is inherently practical. It's about building. But it requires a solid foundation, and the sources are clear. This foundation is the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Now, we need to immediately universalize that phrase. They clarify that this fear, this yara, isn't about cowering terror. It's really about profound humility, an awe-filled reverence for a transcendent standard, something bigger than us.
Okay, so this humility, it's the starting point. It's the premise that there is a moral order, a standard, higher than our own convenience or our ego. What the source refers to as the plumb line.
Yes, precisely. Wisdom, then, is about aligning our decisions with that transcendent order, with that plumb line. And that alignment is what ensures that choices endure in principle, because you've submitted yourself and your decision to a standard that is, well, unmoving. You simply can't build straight if you don't acknowledge the plumb line exists.
Okay, let's get practical. Discernment is the active tool of wisdom,
Right.
right? The ability, diacrinage, I think was the term, to distinguish truth from noise, to separate the straight from the crooked. What are the core practices the sources offer?
Right, the toolkit. Tool number one is, I'd say, non-negotiable for anyone fighting Chronos today. The still, small voice. Basically, silence as a strategy. We have to intentionally seek out quiet reflection. Think of the Elijah story. When he was desperately looking for guidance, the signal wasn't the big, noisy, dramatic event, the wind, the earthquake, the fire, all that chaos. It was found in the sheer silence after all that noise. That noise represents the urgency, the distraction of the moment.
So the application for the modern leader is pretty essential then. You have to literally build caves of silence into your life. That means intentionally blocking out white space on your calendar, not for more meetings, but for deep, undistracted thought. That pause isn't a luxury, it's actually the strategic counter to constant reaction.
Couldn't agree more. Then tool number two is the plumb line test. The sources remind us that the prophet Amos used a literal plumb line, that unmoving standard, to judge whether Israel's actions, their societal walls, were truly vertical, straight.
So what's the organizational plumb line today?
Well, the sources suggest holding every single decision up to the principle of integrity in a relationship, basically. Love God or your highest standard with all your heart, and love your neighbor, your stakeholder, as yourself. Simple, but profound. If a decision cultivates division, if it harms dignity, if it generates strife, then the wall is crooked, regardless of its immediate profitability or efficiency.
Okay, that leads nicely into a great challenge to our sort of lone genius culture. Tool number three, the counsel of many. We're kind of obsessed with the heroic CEO who figures it all out alone, right? But the sources explicitly warn against this ego trap. They quote Proverbs. In an abundance of counselors, there is safety.
Yeah, and true counsel is the necessary antidote to the ego and, just as importantly, the echo chamber. It means actively seeking out people who are not just yes men, people who are honest, genuinely wise, and critically diverse enough in perspective to actually challenge your assumptions and spot your inevitable blind spots. If everyone in your inner circle looks and thinks exactly like you, well, you don't really have a counsel at all.
Good point. And finally, tool number four, the fruit inspection. This sounds like the ultimate reality check. As Jesus said, by their fruits you will know them.
Exactly. This forces us to look past the packaging, the stellar credentials, the eloquent presentation, the market hype, and actually inspect the long-term human and organizational outcomes.
Yeah.
Does your decision produce good fruit? Things like trust, peace, patience, respect. Or does it produce bad fruit, like jealousy, nasty internal competition, selfish ambition? The source material uses some really vivid language here. warning us that this kind of low-level, self-serving wisdom actually leads to utter dysfunction. The results, the fruit, they're the proof in the end.
Okay, let's see this hokmah in action. Let's look at those two quick case studies you mentioned. Take Daniel in Babylon. He was forced into this really complex, hostile environment, commands that violated his core integrity.
Right. But his action wasn't rash rebellion. That would have just ended his career, probably his life. It was a strategic, principled negotiation. It actually involved tool 3, the counsel, in a way. He used the existing system to propose a data-driven trial. Test us for 10 days on the simpler diet. He wasn't rejecting authority outright. He was proposing a better way forward, one that preserved his integrity, improved his effectiveness. And the fruit. He gained massive influence and respect.
Okay. And then the ultimate example of seizing the opportune moment, the Kairos moment, has to be Esther. I mean, she faced an impossible scenario. Approach the king unsummoned and risk death, or stay quiet and watch her people be destroyed. Her cousin Mordecai posed that ultimate Kairos question, right? In Esther 4.15, who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this?
Exactly. But notice the strategic depth, the chokmah, in her response. Her very first action wasn't impulsive. It was a 3-day fast, a deliberate, focused pause. Tool 1, silence as strategy. She actively silenced the Chronos, the panic, the noise of court politics, the urgency to find the Kairos, the divine strategy. And that pause, that space, allowed her to discern the exact approach needed. It was a blend of humility, strategy, and incredible courage.
Wow. Okay, so if we take this toolkit, silence, plumb line, counsel, and fruit, and try to apply it to a modern decision, like that complex corporate layoff scenario often mentioned in our source material.
Right. So a foolish path, one driven purely by the idol of efficiency and the tyranny of Chronos. Well, looks at a spreadsheet, sees a number, and sends out a cold, immediate corporate email cutting 15% of the staff. Done. The wall is crooked, though, because it completely ignores human dignity in the process.
Okay, so what does the wise path look like?
A wise path, guided by Chokmah, uses the plumb line first. Is this respectful? Does it uphold dignity? It uses the counsel. Have we genuinely explored every single alternative with diverse input? And it uses the still small voice. Have we paused? Have we truly done everything we possibly could before taking this step? That wise decision might still involve pain, layoffs might still happen, but it focuses intensely on preserving respect and long-term integrity. It ensures the fruit of the action is measured mercy and maybe retained trust, not just bitter cynicism and ultimately organizational breakdown.
That really feels like the essential transformation we're talking about here. Wisdom is the courage, really, to slow down, to see clearly, to align deeply with your ultimate standard, whatever that is, and then act faithfully. It sounds like an invitation almost to a lifelong apprenticeship, to become anchored in deep rather than just reactive and loud.
Well said. And this raises the final provocative thought we want to leave you with today. It builds directly on the source material's focus on legacy, on the ultimate choice. Here it is. If your core goal shifted today, right now, from success, as the world typically defines it, metrics, promotions, profit, faithfulness to your highest principles, to that plumb line, how differently would you approach the very next complex decision that lands on your desk? Just think about the lasting fruit that kind of change would bear.